Most people have no idea where they actually stand financially. They look at income. They look at the neighborhood they live in. They look at the car in the driveway, the vacations on social media, or the size of someone's house. And based on that, they assume they know who is doing well and who is not. But that is not how wealth works. Because wealth is not about what you earn. It is not about what you spend. And it is definitely not about how successful your life looks from the outside. Wealth is about net worth, what you own minus what you owe. And once you look at the real numbers, a lot of people are far lower on the ladder than they think. Some are higher too. But either way, the truth is usually surprising. In this video, we are going to break down what wealth actually looks like across America and where your household may really fit. And by the end, you may see your financial position very differently. If you want more videos that help you understand real wealth clearly and practically, subscribe to the channel. Section 1. The mistake most people make when judging wealth. This is where most people get the whole conversation wrong. They judge wealth by income. If someone makes a lot of money, people assume they are doing well. If someone has a lower salary, people assume they are behind. But income is not wealth. Income is just money coming in. Wealth is what remains after spending, debt, and obligations have taken their share. That is why net worth matters so much more. Net worth is the real scorecard. It is what you own minus what you owe. Your house equity, savings, investments, retirement accounts, and other assets on one side. Credit cards, loans, mortgage balances, and other debts on the other. And once you start looking at wealth that way, your whole perspective changes. Because now you realize a high earner can still be financially weak if most of their life is financed. And a more modest earner can quietly be building real wealth if they are increasing assets and keeping debt under control. That is the shift this video is built on. We are not measuring who looks successful. We are measuring who has actually built something. And those are often not the same people. Section 2. The bottom and lower middle are much closer than most people think. A huge part of the country is financially fragile, even if life looks normal from the outside. At the bottom quarter of the wealth ladder, household net worth is under roughly $23,000. That usually means very limited assets, very little liquid savings, and in some cases debt that wipes out much of what a household owns. One serious expense can create real damage. Then you move into the lower middle, roughly $23,000 to $179,000 in household net worth. That sounds much better, and in some ways it is. But this is where a lot of people misunderstand stability. Much of that wealth is often tied up in home equity, not cash. So on paper, the household looks more secure than it may actually feel in real life. That is the key point. A household can look fine from the outside and still be highly dependent on the next paycheck. A car repair, temporary job loss, or medical expense can still create stress because the cushion is thin and the liquid savings are limited. So when you look at the bottom and lower middle, what you really see is not just low wealth. You see how common financial vulnerability actually is. And that surprises a lot of people. Because what looks stable from the outside is often much more fragile underneath. Section 3. What the median American household actually looks like. The median American household has a net worth of about $179,000. That means half of households have more and half have less. On paper, that sounds solid. In real life, it often feels less impressive. That is because most of that wealth usually is not liquid. A large share is tied up in home equity, with some in retirement accounts, and only a modest cash cushion. So the median household may own something meaningful, but still have limited flexibility. That is the part people miss. Middle does not always mean secure. It often means steady income, manageable debt, and some assets, but not much room for a major shock. So when people hear middle, they often imagine comfort. But in many cases, it really means doing okay without much margin. Section 4, where wealth starts to feel different. The upper middle class, roughly $179,000 to $610,000 in household net worth, is where wealth starts becoming more balanced. Home equity still matters, but retirement savings, investments, and other assets begin playing a bigger role. Debt is still present, but it is usually more manageable. Then the upper class, roughly $610,000 to $1.72 million, looks different again. At that level, wealth is no longer built mostly through one house. It is spread across multiple assets, and investments often make up the majority of net worth. That means the money is more flexible, more diversified, and more capable of growing on its own. That is the real shift. As you climb, wealth changes from being mostly stored to being actively structured for growth. Section 5. Top 10% is lower than some people think. Now we get to the top 10%, and this is where a lot of people get surprised. The entry point is roughly $1.72 million in household net worth. For some viewers, that sounds impossibly high. For others, it sounds lower than they expected for the top 10%. The truth is, it is both. It is more reachable than many people imagine in theory, but still much farther away than most households realize in practice. What changes at this level is not just the number, it is how the money works. Investments start producing income, dividends, interest, rental income, business profits. Wealth is no longer just something you own. It is something that starts helping carry the load. That creates a very different kind of financial life, one with more flexibility, more options, and more ability to take risks without blowing everything up. And this is where the gap between looking successful and actually being wealthy becomes very clear. A person can look rich long before they are anywhere near this tier, but crossing into the top 10% usually means something much more powerful than appearances. It means you have built a financial base large enough to create real freedom. It also shows how much bigger the jumps get at the top. Going from the middle to the upper middle is a meaningful step, but going from there into the top 10% requires a much bigger leap. The ladder does not rise evenly. It widens fast near the top, which is why so many people underestimate how concentrated wealth really is. Section 6. Age matters, but trajectory matters more. A younger household will often rank lower on the wealth ladder simply because it has had less time to build assets, pay down debt, grow home equity, or let investments compound. That does not automatically mean the household is doing poorly. It may just be earlier in the process. That is why this ladder is a snapshot, not a verdict. Where you are today matters, but the direction you are moving matters more. Paying down debt, building equity, investing consistently, and increasing assets over time can shift your position far more than most people expect. So the real question is not just, where am I right now? It is, am I moving upward? Because intentional habits change long-term outcomes. And over time, trajectory matters much more than the starting point. So the point of knowing this ladder is not comparison for its own sake. It is clarity. Once you understand that net worth is the real measurement, not income, not appearances, not lifestyle, you start looking at your finances differently. You stop guessing. You stop measuring yourself by what looks successful from the outside, and you start paying attention to what you are actually building. That is what matters most. Your current number is not your final destination. People move up by paying down debt, building equity, saving consistently, and investing over time. Progress does not usually happen all at once. It happens through repeated actions that slowly change the structure of your finances. So, do one useful thing today. Calculate your household net worth. Add up what you own. Subtract what you owe. Know your number. Because you do not move up the ladder by guessing. You move up by knowing where you are and improving it over time. If this helped, subscribe to the channel for more clear, practical videos on real wealth. And let me know in the comments, where did you think you ranked before hearing these numbers? And if you want to go one step further, watch the next video on the habits that quietly move people up the wealth ladder over time.